I'm Wesley Ford for our city. Afrikaans is the third most spoken language in South Africa. Its roots play a significant part in our history, our struggles, and in present-day South Africa. In Heritage Month, on September the 23rd and 24th, the One World Festival in Paarl will have the African Taal Monument bathed in various colours to symbolise how far Afrikaans has come as a language in South Africa. I'm at Heart FM, where I'm speaking to Acclaimed DJ and executive member of Camissa Solutions, Clarence Ford, to tell us about his experience of Afrikaans in South Africa.
I grew up in an Afrikaans working class household. Both my mom and dad are working. My mom's speaking to me in Afrikaans out in Parkwood. So I go to sub A, which is grade 1 these days, and my mother puts me into an English class. So it's very difficult for somebody to reconcile. All of my life, up and until 5.5 years old, for her to say, "Ek is lief vir jou," was all that I wanted to hear. Now, that wasn't good enough. You know, "I love you" was the other language that I need. But she thought that by me speaking English, I would have a greater chance in an apartheid South Africa. So, you know, it's about identity issues, which I think a lot of colored people grapple with today. And it's about how, you know, not just that, but how your mother would, or your father, or your auntie would swirl your hair so your hair can be a little straighter, because maybe you stand a better chance in an apartheid South Africa. So, you know, it's all about those identity issues. And young people don't want to go through having to reconcile who they are, because first you spoke Afrikaans, now I must speak English. Afrikaans is not good enough for me, or I'm not, you know, the right skin color, or my hair is not the right. You are perfect when you are born, you know, and that language doesn't make you less than perfect. Neither does your skin color, neither does your hair. I think it is a contested language, and it's and there's a lot that must be debunked. There's a lot of history that must be told. I'm not necessarily the person that must tell this history, but the little bit that I know, I'll gladly share with you. So it is comprised of very many languages. It is a fact that Arabic is a part of the languages. The word Baya is an Arabic language. It speaks to the diversity of origins. So the colonial history was Dutch. And the slaves, for example, found the derivative thereof to communicate with their slave owners. The slaves communicated with the slave owners in Afrikaans, not in Dutch, but it was like a bridging language. So some of the origins have been claimed from Indonesia, where a lot of slaves, and the Malaysian archipelago, a lot of slaves came into Cape Town. And it was, in fact, those slaves that built the original city of Cape Town under Dutch rule, also under English rule. Then, of course, there is the indigenous Khoi, who also learned to talk. In fact, they were trading with most of the colonial powers who would use Table Bay Harbour to come and replenish their stocks. They would trade. And they would trade in a derivative of Dutch. They couldn't speak Dutch necessarily. So there was some African influences in the language as well. We're talking about Dutch being obviously at the center of this particular language, and that's the diversity of it. And the Afrikaanse Taal Monument, in fact, gives credit to that diversity. A lot of people don't know, but it's not just in terms of the European contribution to the language. That Afrikaanse Taal Monument pays credit to those slaves from Southeast Asia, plays credit to Africa for its contribution, and depicts a more diverse origin of the language. Okay, I'm not a linguist, but I know that the kind of Suiwer Afrikaans language that people had this myopic and continue to have very myopic and narrow association with, where they take ownership exclusively and don't include other Afrikaanses into that ownership, is slowly but surely being eroded. So there's a Suiwer Afrikaans dat ek kan nie praat. Ek praat my ma se Afrikaans, my kombuis Afrikaans, and it's peppered with English, and it's peppered with ngas and all kinds of stuff. So then there's an Afrikaans, which is a very distinct Cape Town flavor. You go to Namakwaland, you get a very distinct Afrikaans flavor. You go to Durban and you go to Joburg, you get a very different Afrikaans. So it's not just about that Suiwer Afrikaans. In fact, we were measured by that Suiwer Afrikaans, and we failed heavily at school. Van ons kan nie so suiwer praat nie. Is nie wat ons doen nie. Ons praat plat Afrikaans in ons huis saam met ons ma's. So, and Afrikaans is finding the energy, rightfully so, to include new words and new contributions to the language. It is proving to be dynamic, and it is showing in fact, a nice little pattern now of opening up to those other people who speak it differently, and that's exciting. So Afrikaans finds a focus, and we propose a broader ownership of the language, and we propose that that it has a future. It has a future, and it is relevant for this particular country. It is the language of slave owners. It is the language of slaves. It is the language of oppressed. It is the language of the oppressor. And we want that broader influences to be embraced. But it's not just about that. It's the One World Festival of Healing. So it's a German adage. The adage says, if you share your pain is halved. If you share joy, joy is multiplied. So with music and song and dance and poetry representing as diverse a cultural spectrum as possible, we know that everybody's going to find ownership in the offering. But today there's 15 countries. The conference starts. It's a conference on pain that precedes the festival, and these 15 countries, there's Syria's represented, countries that are seeing serious kind of pain, like war, Palestine, 15 countries, and they're going to talk pain, and they're going to talk about responses to this particular